You've landed on The Substance, a podcast aiming at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Trevor Aiken. I'm joined by my two friends, Philip.
What's up, man?
And Vincent.
Good evening.
Yeah, indeed, man.
It's been a year, guys, huh?
It
has.
Dude, that is very true. And man, I was telling Vincent earlier, like, this year kind of threw off my vibe, but like, I'm sure that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. So
there was just a thing or two.
Just a thing or two of vibe. It kind of threw off the Emperor's Groove, if you know what I mean. And got locked in with Disney Plus for a long time, so maybe have a lot of extra kids movie references.
There you go. Emperor's New Groove is actually like real stinking good.
So we did this kind of episode before for 2018.
Oh yeah, back when we were a podcast
review. Back then when we were a podcast back then, and it was just me and you, Philip.
It was,
and the thing was like what, 2 hours, something?
Was quite long.
And I think it's like the episode nobody listens to anymore because it's like 2018 media. What is this?
Yeah, 2018 media roundup. There was some good stuff in there, but yeah, like almost all of our old catalog gets listens here. There.
It does.
I don't think the 2018 media roundup.
I haven't seen that one.
But
get a lot
when
yet.
it dropped, tons of listens.
I will say too, like, even if you don't give it a listen, go read the description, read the notes. We still have a ton of great links in there. Ton of great shout outs and like book references.
Still.
Oh yeah, 100%. I just looked through them today. They're super good stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I shouted that out. It was kind of funny. One of the books I shouted out was a book that I had checked out from the library I just got for Christmas this year.
Oh nice.
Oh nice.
Which one was that? Maybe that's what I thought of.
Saints and Sinners.
Nice.
History of the Popes. But no, we'll try with some editing magic.
We talked about Wreck-It Ralph 2 when I went with you and the fam for Ava's first movie.
Back when you could go to movies.
Fun. Back when you could go to movies.
But yeah, what we want to do today, doing our media review, roundup, whatever you want to call it. This is the non-cancerous roundup. But we want to start out.
Joke.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Shout out to everyone who laughed at that. Listeners at home.
And for me, shout out to everyone that laughed at that.
You jerk. Let's start with our substance episode favorite. So like, we've been doing this. We do this podcast because we love it. Mm-hmm. We do it because it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
And some episodes really stand out to us as stuff that we remember fondly, and like even like maybe sometimes we would go back to and be like, no, like that is some really good content that I really love. So what episodes for you guys stood out in particular?
Okay. Vince, feel free to jump in if you want.
Yeah, so my two favorite episodes have been, quite honestly, I have to give all the shout outs to Jesse Eubanks episode. Having Jesse Eubanks on was super, 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 super good. Enjoyed the content, enjoyed the engagement, enjoyed it was quite honestly just my top most favorite and most listened to. Like, I listened to that a few times just because I enjoyed just the perspective on what was going on there. So I would say definitely Jesse Eubanks as my number one first round draft pick. And then I'm a bit torn, if I'm being honest, because I think after that we had a lot of great.
Vince, I don't want any of this dishonesty here in the show. Be honest with us.
I guess if I had to pick, I mean, if we're limiting ourselves to two, following the rules, I would have to say I really liked our topic toss-up on political idolatry when we were answering the guest question, celebrity pastors, and then the OK Boomer kind of section. I feel like that was a really, really, really good topic toss-up, just going into those different topics. And I think a lot of wisdom was there. And not just because we said it, but what was being said was very true. So I really enjoyed that one.
Dope. Nice, dude.
Those are good ones. For me, I definitely I think I have to agree with Vince on the Jesse Eubanks one. It's one of our most listened to episodes. I'm getting ready to, because this one, I think this episode is maybe the only one we've recorded with such a quick turnaround time, because we're recording it at the end of 2020, trying to get it out real soon because it's a 2020 wrap up.
Oh, the Alyssa one I think was our fastest turnaround.
The Alyssa one also because that was a holiday movie. But yeah, I send the Jesse Eubanks one to so many people. It was a wonderful conversation, and it really is one of, I'm proud of every single show we put out. But as far as like our internal desire for what we want to accomplish with the substance, I think Jesse's episode is a prime example. Not that it's better than all the other ones or whatever, but like as far as thoughtfully and clearly engaging with important matters within the culture and the church and things that have eternal significance and meaning. It's just a wonderful episode, and I don't think I've sent it to anybody. Trevor's maybe sent it to a person or two that didn't fully appreciate it. Everybody, like
only through the RSS feed.
I love sending it to folks, and it's just a wonderful episode. And then, man, we've got so many good solo shows and so many good guests. Like, it's kind of hard for me, but I think I might have to go with A Hidden Life, just because, I mean, Brett and Alyssa would probably be vying for that second spot, just because they're both critics I respect a lot and have been reading for so long. Little Women was one of my favorite movies of last year, as was A Hidden Life. They both came out 2019, actually.
Yeah.
But just talking with him about such a inadvertently timely film was just the themes and the movie itself. It was, I love that so much. So nice. I would probably pick Social Justice and A Hidden Life for my two.
Nice.
Yeah. Those are, I mean, it is somewhat hard to pick and limit, but I'll pick and say White Too Long with Robert P. Jones.
That was my favorite moment.
That was a good one.
Of this whole 2.0 run so far.
Man.
One of our after hours moments, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And
if
mentioned
you know,
it
you
on,
know.
Yeah,
nobody
you
knows.
Atomic Habits. That was pretty good. But no, it's that was just an exciting adventure for me in general, because it started with reading in the Atlantic and being like, man, this dude, like, I definitely relate to a lot of what he's talking about. I'd love to, and then read his book and was like, this stuff is fire. And then we got him on the show, and I was actually able to ask him a question on the show that came from the book that I wanted clarity on. That I read early in the book, and it like raised a question, but then the book didn't answer it, and like I was able to ask
the author
him
personally.
So great, so excited. That was the section we talk about inerrancy. So go check out that episode
for sure.
If you haven't yet.
Episode.
I mean, all these. For my second one, man, it is tough because I kind of waffled between a couple, between Thoughts for Young Men and Cancel Culture, because those are both really good. But I think I'm going to land with Thoughts for Young Men, because
such a good book.
I do the editing for the show, and like as I was going through and listening to the things that we were talking about, the quotes from the book, like the interaction that we had with the book, I'm just like, man, this is why we do this, because it is just some classic good wisdom, like just a good godly Christian guy. Like, it's a great spotlight. It was cool having the giveaway from Banner of Truth.
Yeah, shout out to Banner of Truth for those books. And if you went on your own to Google it or purchase it and you read it, let us know what you thought.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I'd say that episode was definitely one of my favorites.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really nice to have an excuse to go back over Thoughts for Young Men. Like,
oh yeah,
I've read it, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times, but like and you can read it in like a day or two.
Oh yeah,
it's just such a wonderful book.
It's one of those classics where you like, if you go back years later, you don't even realize like you started quoting it along the way, or you picked up that thinking and were like, you just integrate it. Like so many things I've read and just integrate it into my life, and then you forget like where it came from, and I was like, oh, that's where this came from for so much stuff. So it was pretty
again, my disclaimer: you don't need to be young or a man to benefit from it. It's a timeless
Absolutely.
Very accessible resource.
All right, guys, let's keep it moving. Let's say books.
Books.
All right. I'll just dive on in. So, Trev, you already mentioned both the first two of mine.
Your books. I'm sorry, bro.
No, you're good.
I got Vince's script up here.
All right. So Robert P. Jones, Why Too Long, and J.C. Ryle, Thoughts for Young Men. Fantastic books that I've read this year. But I did start to get into audiobooks. And so I have two that are going to be a little different. Like one is right on par, and then the other one's a little different. One is R.C. Sproul's Defending the Faith, an Introduction to Apologetics. So it's a fantastic book just about kind of the history of apologetics in Christianity. And also kind of styles of apologetics. And though, and not to get into too many terms, I don't come to the same conclusions as R.C. Sproul as far as pursuit of apologetics, but I
Not
think
an evidentialist.
Yeah, he's more of an evidentialist.
Is he a little bit more of an evidentialist?
He is an evidentialist.
Or was?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's classic. Yeah, classic apologetics. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm more of a presuppositionalist. So, for that reason, nevertheless, I sincerely enjoy the content. Like it's just good content to know and understand about apologetics, and it really kind of lights the fire under an individual to, if that's especially a passion that they enjoy, to really just kind of fuel that desire to engage in apologetics. So I really enjoyed that audiobook. And then my wife reads Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if anybody knows who Brandon Sanderson is, but he is
I don't.
He's a fictional character writer, and
Brandon Sanderson is a fictional character.
No,
Sorry,
no, I'll start over on that.
he's a real man.
No, so Brandon Sanderson writes fiction, and he has written several different kinds of series that my wife will swear by are like the best fantasy books that you'll read. And
Interesting.
So
I didn't know you and your wife read fantasy books.
Yeah, she's really into him. She's the one that got me into him. And I will say, I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm not as in it as she is, but she
No shame in that.
she got me into a series called Mistborn, Mistborn, and I have to say, like, it is fire. It's a good book.
All right.
Give
us the elevator pitch.
Say again.
What's the elevator pitch? I have never read fantasy series. I always kind of wanted to find some good ones, but I don't mind reading long books either. I've just never found one that was particularly like, I don't know. I've never found a series.
Yeah, I would say this one is like a trilogy, but then he creates kind of these worlds where a lot of these things can overlap as well as they are distinctively different. So he has tons of books. I would say the elevator pitch to Mistborn is just there is obviously a kind of world where there's an evil ruler and a young person emerges with a certain kind of abilities that seem to be the hope, in a sense, of what this world is needing. That's probably a bad elevator pitch if my wife heard it, but that's what I gather from it. And it sounds really traditional as far as fiction books, but it's actually really good in its detail.
So is it like set a long time ago?
Yeah, it's definitely like no cell phones or anything like that.
No.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
So it's not like a post-apocalyptic. It's like kind of like fantasy world, like
swords,
Middle Ages,
horses,
kind of. Yeah, okay.
Castles
Okay.
and all of that.
Dragons? Wizards? All that?
I haven't encountered a dragon yet. So it's not.
All right.
It's
Well,
not
I'm
like
glad.
that.
That's probably good for your physical health.
That's a good B-roll. I just need to clip that and then like put that anywhere.
Or that should be like your text tone when Vince texts you. I haven't encountered a dragon yet. Nice. No, I'll maybe check that out. I purchased one book, or was given a book, whatever, that like I want to read one day. I don't know.
You buy books?
I haven't even read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Need to,
yeah,
man.
I do want to get into fantasy sometime. Cool.
awesome.
I'm gonna shout out. I'll shout out a couple books. So I have some stuff from different categories. I feel like 2020 was maybe a big reading year for me. Whether it was through audiobooks, honestly, a lot through audiobooks. Looking at these, I think almost every single one of them at least started as an audiobook. But let me go through these real quick. I don't want to take time on that. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to cut all of that.
Rip it and rip it here with one more.
Rip it and rip it. So first book is kind of a good book for business or just anybody who has to help people in relationships, like, or has a relationship, really. So just about anybody. But The Coaching Habit by Michael Stanier. Basically,
Stanier. I read that as Michael B. Stainer, and I thought that was hilarious.
You're so funny. But basically, the book is centered around 7 questions that you can ask that kind of get conversations moving, get the real issues uncovered, get to the bottom of something, and helps you to really get into coaching. Some of the best questions from that that I have used and integrated into my life are what's on your mind and the question, and what else? And those are the first 2. There's 7. They're all pretty good. You can adapt them for different situations, but it's a really short book. The audiobook, I believe, is 3 hours.
Whoa,
so
that's short.
It's really kind of almost a handbook. It's very helpful. Fooled by Randomness is another one. This one is kind of a philosophical reflection on just how little we appreciate the randomness of our life. And really what I should say is like how ordered we think life is in general versus random. And his argument as a stock trader who basically makes a living off of things being more random than people think, his argument is that life is a lot more random than we tend to think, because we as humans kind of thrive off of finding the order in the chaos and imposing order on a situation, maybe even when there isn't some. And it's just a very interesting kind of philosophical outlook on life, on things, and on how people kind of either mathematically or just reasoning wise make some mental errors about the world and how it works by trying to impose order in ways that it doesn't exist. A few more here. I read this year by Ibram X. Kendi, How to Be an Antiracist. And
Really good book.
I love that book. I don't agree with every chapter in it because I take a more biblical approach to critical theory, which I believe is going to be the next episode after this one. So, or maybe it's going to be the next episode after this one. So stay tuned for that on what we mean by that. But How to Be an Antiracist was a very excellent work, very well-resourced. It goes in between historical notes and things that kind of have that objective scientific look at things with personal anecdotes and things that kind of reinforce the human side of it. It's very fair, I found. I thought he called out folks and how racism infects thinking of all sorts of different people. Grip it and rip it.
So just get it out the way here.
Grip it and rip it, Philip. Oh, yeah. Drink that beer.
Yo, chill.
All right. So anyway, dude, I might just gift myself an unedited episode and just put this all up.
There you go. Why not?
Merry Christmas to me. So anyway, How to Be an Anti-Racist was such a good book, and if you haven't read it yet, you should read it. Honestly,
I co-signed that one. I didn't put that on my list, but I listened to the audiobook and I thought it was excellent. I'm so excited for Jamar Tisby's book coming out next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tisby's book's really good too. I didn't put it on my list, but I did read it this year. And
The How to Fight Racism.
And he's got the new one coming out, which will be pretty cool. So, speaking about fighting sin, another one that I read, and if you've been in Christian ministry as a guy for any amount of time, you've either personally dealt with or helped someone personally deal with the unwanted sexual addiction, whether that's pornography or any other kind of form of sin in that way. And there's a lot of Christian books on that topic. There's a ton. And there's very few that I would go back to over and over and over again. But I would say Unwanted by Jay Stringer is the best one I've ever read on the topic.
Pretty revolutionary.
It's really good. Honestly, it is very specific to unwanted sexual addiction, but it's also like very the principles that are there are just true to sin in general and can be extrapolated. But he talks about some really healthy things and things that I think that the church could really look into. He's a guy who's been in the profession, who's helped out guys in different John schools and gals in his counseling practice for years. So definitely, if that's something that you're dealing with or know someone who's dealing with or just want better perspective on, check out Unwanted by Jay Stringer. Really awesome book. And then finally, biography. We're going to talk more about the musical later, but that got me into reading the actual biography of Alexander Hamilton.
You listen to that junk, right? You didn't
I listen. Yep, I listen to.
It's 30, 40 hours.
Usually, I like to listen to historical stuff because it's just kind of getting into the story. But yeah, this is like 35-hour book. A lot of great data by Ron Chernow. And Alexander Hamilton, after listening to his biography, I'd say is kind of a hero of mine now.
Nice. Because
he is a guy, I mean, his moral life was not great in a bunch of ways. And he's not necessarily like a Christian role model in that sense.
So you're saying we had some guys at the founding of America who weren't the greatest?
Sure. And I mean, honestly, of those guys, he was probably one of the better guys. But Alexander Hamilton was the guy who would write you into a corner with intellect, but then literally go pick up his sword and run into battle. The pen and the sword, one in the left hand, one in the right hand. That was just the way he lived his life. And that's not, for example, Thomas Jefferson. He was kind of the philosopher, and he fled cities when he evacuated his capital in Virginia without and ran without providing for a proper defense or evacuation for the citizens. That's the kind of person Jefferson was. Hamilton wasn't that guy. He was the guy who was begging to get into the war. So it's just, there's something about that intellect with action.
Sure.
That we talk about all the time on this podcast about why we want that for our lives and for the church. And he was that. And so I really admire that about him.
I don't know if I'll ever read that, but I really love the show and the music.
Nice.
I might. I've heard so many people say how great it was, but I've got a lot of historical books and Christian living and theological books that I was I feel like I'd rather spend. But you said it's really encouraging too. It's an exciting. It just seems a little daunting. I'm not used to reading mammoth historical books
listen to
like
it.
that.
Listen to an audiobook.
35 hours is a lot.
You could do it.
Cool. Maybe for some of these other sections, this is.
You listen to 35 hours of podcast, probably.
Oh, easy.
Yeah. Just treat it like that.
So I also put White Too Long on my list. I was just kind of floored by it, honestly. I think I had read the Atlantic article that Trevor had, but I did after the fact. I heard him on Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and I just thought it was cool that a guy who seemed before we interacted with him and before I really got into his book, like, just seems like a real guy trying to honor the Lord. He realized some inconsistencies and some real severe problems with things inside his faith tradition and worked really hard to fix them. Found out he kind of couldn't, kind of left to a degree the tradition he started with, not like left the faith, but like the Southern Baptist Convention kind of deal of it for him. And he started PRRI, the Public Religion and Research Institute. Like, I just thought it was pretty admirable, him trying to help the church really in an area that they really needed help. So being able to talk to him, I mean, it was a hard book.
Oh, yeah.
That was probably the hardest book I read this year.
It was not a fun read.
And, like, I mean, we're all, if you listen to the show, not a social justice show, but, I mean, we get into those topics a lot. And, I mean, there's a lot of hard truths and realities that we kind of come across and are kind of thinking about and learning about, reading about, stuff like that. But, I mean, White Too Long was such a hard read, particularly because it was about, like, our faith tradition and the overlapping with white supremacy, and it was just ugly.
Yeah.
So that was a really impactful book for me. And then also on the personal, practical, like, discipline side, I read a lot of books for work and just for personal and professional development. Trevor recommended, I'm a fan of Cal Newport, but before this year I had not yet read Digital Minimalism.
Oh, so good.
Thought it was phenomenal. I kind of need to go back and reread it or listen to it again.
Yeah.
Just because I feel myself slipping a little bit. And not that I'm going to do everything his way, but I mean, just being mindful of the ways we waste time, because time is our most valuable resource, especially as people of faith. Like, we have one life.
Yeah.
And in this life, we are supposed to be redeeming our time for ourselves, the Lord, our families, our community.
That's right.
Trying to steward the gifts and the resources we have. Digital minimalism was really helpful, especially in the first half of the year, just for me trying to stay focused in what I was trying to do in my vocation and in my family and for this podcast. I mean, Vince was very kind, but like a lot of the reasons that the Substance has been able to get some of the guests it is and find some of the little level ups we have for being such an independent show is like, I really do try to put good time into good activities to try to help put us out there. So, I mean, I thought it was a super helpful book.
Yeah.
And then another one, we talked a little bit before. I think I gave a shout out to another one of this author's books earlier with Superman Smashes the Klan. But one of the comic book writers I really got into this year was Gene Luen Yang. And he had another book in addition to, because Superman Smashes the Klan also came out this year. But it was a book called Dragon Hoops that, fingers crossed, I'm talking, we might do a full-on episode of Substantive Stories.
I saw you reading that, so tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'm seeing if we can get the publisher and the author to maybe hook up with us and get on the show.
That'd be cool.
It is a thick
It's about
comic book.
Basketball team?
It's about a basketball team. It's about a high school basketball team.
And it's
in
a
California.
comic book, like a graphic novel?
Yeah, it's a graphic novel.
Okay.
It's a story. It's a single story, beginning, middle, and end, that is part history of basketball, part story of this high school team and the history of this school and their program and the different players and coaches who have been a part of this program over the years. And then also it's just kind of about like courage in general. So you don't have to. I used to love basketball. My dad liked basketball. I wasn't a big basketball guy. But like, there was a time in my life where basketball was important. But I'm not a big
in
sports
sixth grade,
guy. In late elementary,
when we were getting
middle school,
destroyed.
Well, no, basketball was not an important part of my life. It was just a thing I did. But you don't have to be a sports fan to get in. Like, I'm a big comic book fan, but I was like, well, I've heard a lot. It had a lot of buzz. It was critically winning a lot of awards. People who I respected on Twitter were buzzing about it. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. I know a lot of his other stuff had been like lauded before and won a lot of awards. And I had already read Superman Smashes the Klan at that time. So I'm like, oh, he's got a new book. I'll check it out. And really, in just the intro, that was like 8 pages or whatever, like the preface of the book, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, it's just a really compelling story. So hopefully down the line, maybe look out for our first. I want to do a comic at some point on the show. I think that would be a lot of fun.
There you go. I'm not opposed to it. Vince?
No, sir.
Yay.
And this is not a superhero or crime or science fiction book, so I think that this would be cool for a very large audience. Because really, what it is about is like courage and teamwork, like putting yourself out there. And I forget what the tagline is.
I feel like that's kind of a theme in like American sports movies. You know, like the sports drama, kind of like courage and like rising above and.
Well, and it was especially cool how he weaved in the history of the sport of basketball in this team. That was all real. So he was from small steps to great leaps was the tagline of the book.
Dope.
Really, really excellent read. And it was a true story. He was a teacher at this school. So like he had personal involvement. Like he was a character in this. And it was real.
That's cool.
So super cool book.
All right.
Super check it out and hopefully be on the lookout for
Don't just regular check it out. Like if
Super
you have
check
a
it
library.
Actually, I already know
super
two
check it out
listeners. Oh wait, no.
option.
2 or 3 listeners have checked out Superman Smashes the Klan off my recommendation. Also check out this.
Nice. I need to check out some comics from the library. Yo, and what you're saying about digital minimalism's no joke. Like I remember getting into that book and being like, man, this is going to be whack, isn't it? Like this guy.
Trevor doesn't like productivity or personal discipline. He's like, it's all a bunch of like nonsense.
That's not true. I question the assumptions that is behind a lot of entrepreneurship, media, and production. But reading
like
digital,
folks that have thousands and thousands of followers.
yeah. Well, and
no
I thought
activity.
like, how do you be this like digital minimalism thing? I'm like, how do you do this without being fuddy-duddy? You know, how do you do this with like actually
being a guy in the cabin in the woods?
Yeah, like is it going to be some of that kind of nonsense? But like no, like his recommendations are super on point.
They are,
like,
but there's still no way I can
research
get a
based.
week's worth of activity into 30 minutes. I'm definitely spending more than 30 minutes on my device.
Yeah, but he's definitely got different strategies, so it's super good. All right, that's books,
Movies and television.
movies.
Yes, sir. So I had
Jump into it.
some good ones. And I'll run through this quickly.
I think we all had Hamilton on our list. That's cool.
Yeah, so Hamilton definitely was one that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think about halfway through the first song, I was like, "Yep, I'm hooked. I love it."
Was seeing the concert your first experience with it, Vince?
Yeah, so
All right.
I hadn't seen it before, and I heard hype around it and all of that because I think it's been out since like 2015.
It's been out for a minute.
And I was like, yeah, I'm cool with it. I don't know, whatever. And then recently, Elizabeth, my wife, was
My wife.
I'm
Are we
flexing.
talking about that in the movies?
She was like, "Yo, we should watch Hamilton." And at first, I thought it was like 3 or 4 hours, and so I was like, "I'm totally into music." But I don't know if I am going.
I'm not trying to mess with a 4-hour deal.
Yeah, I'll really need to want to watch it for 4 hours. But then
It was over too, though, right?
yeah, it was a
30,
little bit over
40.
too.
And
And
got an
then
intermission.
it was fantastic, and we enjoyed every moment of it, and we both downloaded the playlist or the album right after and kept it playing. It was just it was a really
So
really good
good.
one.
You came
that
over and
one's
watched it
super
with
great.
us.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a solid one. It's very very good. My second one it's a little different. Quite honestly, I enjoyed all the Dave Chappelle specials that came out on Netflix.
Absolutely. I always watch them like week of. If I can.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it, almost to a point, it doesn't even need to be stated, but for the sake of those who are listening, obviously I don't agree with everything, but
No, wait, I thought you were a Dave Chappelle devotee, man.
I like his content. I mean, the dude is funny. And like I said in a different episode, I think it's one of our topic toss-ups. Like I used to listen to him and Paul Mooney back when I was like younger,
That's right. You did mention that.
And he really showed me like that there's things about my culture and environment as well as other cultures and environments and things that can be very contentious when you think about it, or inflammatory or hyper emotional, and just you can laugh about it, and you are allowed to see that in a different way where it can kind of decompress some of that pressure. And it's relieving sometimes to be able to look at something that everybody's up in arms about and step to the side and say, there's a way to look at this that alleviates some of that pressure, and the way to do that is just by a bit of comic relief. So I really enjoyed his specials, and then I really got into docuseries. I watched one that recently came out on HBO Max called Heaven's Gate, and it's talking about the Heaven's Gate suicide cult.
Oh snap!
Weird.
It was heavy. It really was heavy. I didn't like spiritually feel good for
you're into those cult
hours.
documentaries.
Yeah, and it's just I won't spoil too much, but it is a very interesting look at how someone could think, like I or you or anyone can look at that and say, oh man, those guys were off their rockers, or there had to be, kind of a line of thought that was common with them. Maybe they weren't as well educated, or maybe, they were gullible in some sense. And these were individuals who were involved in this cult that were very educated, who were very well off, very capable individuals, what we would classify as functioning individuals in society who adhered to this cult and eventually took their own lives.
Heaven's Gate, is that the one that had a lot of like firsthand, like real footage of like the inside of the cult?
Yeah,
I'd heard about that.
Yeah, it was.
I know there were a couple different documentaries, and one I know you're going to mention next.
Is it like aliens?
Well,
or
no,
something?
they had a one of the people who was embedded in there was like a reporter, and he actually was recording everything. So it's not just like people talking about it. Like the documentary's got like real footage.
Dang.
Yeah, and
so I heard it was pretty heavy.
Yeah,
I haven't watched
that
it
one
yet.
was
I don't know
heavy.
I don't know if it's really high on my queue, to be frank, but
well,
it sounds good.
I have for whatever reason I enjoy books or podcasts or movies or docuseries about cults. They're just very interesting to think about and look into. And I watched another docuseries on a cult called NXIVM. But the name of the actual docuseries is called The Vow, and that is also on HBO Max. And that one's a little different because that one's a little more modern as far as its cult. And Allison Mack, she was an actress that played in like Smallville, I believe, that television show. She was involved in it pretty heavy. And just the details.
Did she go down for it? Like she went to jail or something?
Yeah,
right?
she did. Her and the leader primarily, they did get arrested, and I believe they're serving time. And
so crazy.
It's just crazy how it happens. Crazy how they try to involve people, and quite honestly, like there's reported cases of like they're saying we have a science that can fix people to if they have a phobia or anxiety, that anxiety we can help them like get rid of it and it'll never come back, or certain claims like that. And then one guy in particular and a few people who had the same condition had Tourette's, and they made the claim that they could cure it. And I mean, verifiably, this guy was recorded to have very, very bad Tourette's. And by the end of the program, he didn't anymore.
That's crazy.
And so just seeing how that worked was really insane and heartbreaking as well, because of the disadvantage as well as just the targeting of a lot of young women in that cult. But those two docuseries I watched, and then I watched a lot of movies, but I'm ending my list here at Antebellum.
That looked really good. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, that one was really good. I think the trailer kind of gave the impression that it was going to be one thing, but then the actual movie content kind of...
I turned the trailer off because it looked like it was trying to tell you the whole thing.
Yeah, it's actually a little misleading. Or at least the trailer that I watched, it made it seem like there was some real, some real conceptually complicated things going on. And I think it was a little more simple than that, but still really intense, and just some very, very good scenes in there. So I really enjoyed that movie, and I would say that's my 2020 roundup for movies and TV.
Oh. Yeah, I had a kind of I don't know. I mean, antebellum, obviously that means pre-Civil War times. But I had one on there. I didn't actually see that movie, so I don't know if this directly dovetails, but in my mind it does, to a movie that I watched. I don't remember if it was 2020 I watched it or not.
It's a horror movie.
But yes, I understand it's a horror.
Okay.
I'm talking about the period that it's set
Oh,
in.
nice little segue. I see. I thought you were
Obviously
going down.
not.
I see it now.
Philip's
I
like,
thought you were going up.
I don't
down
understand
your list.
what you're talking
Like,
about.
how
I'm
do
going to
tie this
interrupt
to
you
Star
now.
Wars.
Free State of Jones,
Aha.
though. How are you going to tie this into Star Wars? This guy's looking ahead in the notes. That's funny. But yeah, Free State of Jones. I think Matthew McConaughey is the star of that, and then the
Who
writer.
did all of the podcasts in 2020 except ours.
But the writer of the film worked with the I think he's a professor at Columbia University who's like the guy on the Reconstruction era and a lot of the stuff in the Civil War, Eric Foner. And so if you haven't seen Free State of Jones, you've got to check that out. I think the only thing
I have not, but you made it. You put it much higher up on my list.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would say against it for some folks, if like gore is like a problem, there's a like short scene, honestly could be skippable in the beginning, that really just kind of sets a context for the brutality of the Civil War. I think
it's an R-rated film.
I think it's really necessary for the movie, but like, yeah, it is a very fascinating true story about a guy who fought against the Confederate States in the South, in the Gulf area of Mississippi, Alabama, and actually secured a Union enclave in the midst of Confederate territory in the middle of the war, where he was married interracially, and it was a kind of progressive in that sense, a racially progressive jurisdiction under his control, and he was condemned for years and years and years as a terrorist by the South, up until recently, when modern historians have kind of gotten to take another look at original sources in a lot of ways. So very highly recommend Free State of Jones. And then I've been on a Star Wars kick, as Philip kind of gave away a little bit earlier.
Sorry.
No, it's good. But yeah, man, just with COVID and being locked in, like, it's like, all right, let's check out this Disney Plus. And
this is stuff we've watched this year, not all stuff that came out this year.
yeah. And there's so much stuff, right? Like, there's no way people have watched all this stuff. And like Star Wars, we watched all Clone Wars, and I got my wife into Rebels. It actually was like one of my big successes, I feel like, of the year, because I remember when I first showed it to her, she's like, "That's a dumb cartoon." And like, yeah, I mean, at some level, you're not wrong, but it's Star Wars, and it's actual like canon Star Wars material that's fun, and the story's good, and
it's got a protagonist named Ezra.
It does indeed.
Hey.
And so it's real good. Loved Rebels, loved Clone Wars, and then obviously The Mandalorian.
I need to finish Rebels.
I'm sure there's a lot of people. You need to finish The Mandalorian too, right?
I need to kind of start The Mandalorian.
Yeah. But it's just. I mean, I'm into Star Wars content, so I like
And
it.
it's fun to have stuff that you can watch.
And apparently
with your partner.
this ended up on my notes as Star Wars,
Star Wars.
which is very. Philip, me having a stare war right now.
Yeesh.
Oh man,
Some quality. And
jokes.
you can look out for 2021 and beyond all of the Star Wars content in the world.
Oh my goodness, that's true.
You got like 8 shows.
I'm gonna
8
need
or 10 shows.
I'm gonna need another. I shouldn't even say that on a mic.
You need another pandemic
to watch all the Star Wars content.
Golly. It's
I'm not
gonna
say that.
Way too much. Way too much. I'm sure a lot of it's gonna be good though.
Oh yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'm sure. All right. So this is like that. Now we're halfway into the podcast. The next half is going to be Philip telling us his movie recommendations.
No, it's not actually because you said right before we recorded, oh, maybe we can do 2019 because we were off for 2019 for the podcast. 2019 was a great year for movies.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those listed in front of me, but I will actually. One of the ones that I put on my list was A Hidden Life because I think I watched it in 2020. It officially came out in 2019, but for 2019, real quick, Little Women, we already did the show with Alyssa. So good. Hidden Life.
Did the show with Brett. So good.
Hidden Life is just
so
an
good.
Incredible film.
It's just so good.
People who are film people who are not film people.
I can't think of someone who wouldn't like that movie.
Yeah, people of faith, people who are not people of faith. Like, A Hidden Life is an incredible film.
Yeah.
It is 3 hours. It's a commitment.
That's
You got to
true.
sit down and commit to it. One of the most enjoyable.
Great evening.
I mean, enjoyable is a little bit of a strange word for the movie. It is one of the best film experiences I've had in quite some time.
It's moving.
Yeah,
It's moving.
exceptionally.
Yeah.
Actually, this did come out last year. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but because the Criterion Blu-ray came out this year, The Irishman, which Alyssa mentioned on our Little Women show, incredible movie.
We
and
keep mentioning it.
We did the.
This is probably the fourth time we mentioned it on the
listener
podcast.
poll. I'm sure at some point we'll maybe cover The Irishman on the show, but it's very long. It's very, 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 very long.
Yeah, and I have to see it first because I don't know.
Incredible button. I mean, not button. Forgive me. The man is still alive and hopefully very vital. But kind of like Martin Scorsese's career of making movies about crime. It's an incredible entry into that body of work.
Yeah.
With just kind of a different perspective than I feel like any of his other films have. Alyssa, I highly respect Alyssa's opinion on a number of things, but she says like none of his films ever really truly glorify that life. Violence or like a seedy life, and I don't think I agree in a number of cases. I get that he does show the consequences of a number of things, but I feel like if you show for 2.5 hours the highs and then you show for 5 minutes at the end the lows, then it's not quite the same as weaving throughout an entire film.
Yeah.
Consequences of actions.
And
The Irishman's like wholly unique in the pantheon of Martin Scorsese films in that regard.
Yeah.
Super great movie.
Taking
So,
on the
but for
film
2020, Defy Bloods from Spike Lee. Like, wow. Netflix has...
Where can I catch that? On Netflix?
Mm-hmm. Netflix has, for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a little unfortunate, especially in the time of the pandemic, but in the streaming world, like it's just a reality that streaming services are going to be players in how movies are made. That's fine. That's good. That's progress. But what is kind of a bummer is that if you love movies, if you're a film lover, the way to watch movies is in the theater with other people. And that's kind of hard to do. I was actually super blessed. Kick it back to The Irishman. I saw The Irishman in its 2-week theatrical run here in Kansas City. What?
My search and then the actual movie.
Oh, hilarious. I was very blessed to get to see The Irishman in a theater, and it made the 3.5 hours run by really quick. But with the Five Bloods, I mean, Spike Lee's a huge filmmaker, and actually,
Five Bloods. That's the actual title of it.
Yep.
I kept hearing Defy Bloods. I was like, all right, Defy
hilarious.
Bloods.
Like DEFY.
Yeah.
That's very good.
That's very Trevor.
Google helped me out though. It auto-corrected that junk.
And side note here,
Google
on
was like,
this,
I see you're white. Let me help you out.
I wasn't gonna say that. That's very I mean, that's hilarious. Anyway, so I actually have a connect. I think I told you about this. The guy who wrote Defy Bloods and who wrote Black Klansman is actually a Kansas City guy, and I know a guy who knows him pretty well. And he said, "Hey, do you want to connect? You want to have him on your show?" And I was
a guy
like,
who knows a guy.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
would be
Black
sick.
Klansman was also phenomenal, which we talked about on our 2018 show. But it's so Defy Bloods, you can look it up online, but basically it is I'm a sucker for movies about like fathers and sons, and the Vietnam War is kind of like such a central point for so many issues in the history of America. So it's partially set in the Vietnam War, partially set in the present with men who are in the war, and then also some of their children and legacy and national sins and personal sins and just kind of all these themes that really resonate with me. Little bit of a challenging film, but also it's very entertaining, but it's also very poignant. Also an R-rated movie, so beware, check it out. Language and violence, etc. Hamilton was also on my list. I don't have a ton to say about it other than I knew there's pretty much no way in the world that I was going to get to see it on stage, and especially on stage with the original cast. So, I mean, I've been cranking the original cast soundtrack ever since it came out. Maybe not ever since it came out, but pretty early on. My wife and I were on a road trip, and we got it, and we've been listening to it for years. So to get to see it with the original cast, it was pretty incredible.
Nice.
I mean, most people know what Hamilton is, but if you haven't checked it out for some reason, I couldn't recommend
This
it
is
any
your
higher.
permission slip to go check it out.
And then the last one, as far as movies, I got a couple of shows that I wanted to mention quick here as well. But as far as movies on my list, I have so many movies that I didn't get to see yet this year that I know I'm going to love whenever I get to see it. But recently, I finally got to watch an Amazon Prime original movie called The Sound of Metal. It's a reworked film from one of my favorite modern directors, Derek Cianfrance. He was like a producer and got a credit for like a story credit because it's kind of a reworking of a screenplay he's been working on for like a decade. But The Sound of Metal is about a drummer. And it's kind of funny that's called The Sound of Metal. It was about a drummer essentially in a hardcore band who loses his hearing and then has to cope with life like as a deaf person.
Oh, wow.
And it's really good. It's really affecting, kind of about how we find like beauty and significance in our lives when like the thing that like we are is kind of taken away from us. Like super, super touching movie.
Dude, that went deep, and I want to watch that now.
Nice.
It's really good. Amazon Prime. And if I will also tell you this because Amazon Prime now, kind of like Netflix as well, kind of has like content advisory on it.
Yeah.
So like it'll say nudity. There's not actually nudity in the movie.
Oh.
A guy draws a tattoo that has an image of a naked person. So
Oh,
if that's too
got it.
much for you, whatever. But if you click
Skip
on it
that.
and you see nudity and that's a deal breaker for you, there's not actually nudity in the film.
Good heads up.
Yep. And as far as TV, Show Baraka
This is your
mentioned
parents'
this
choice
before.
segment of the
Yeah,
Substance.
you know what? Like my wife is super sensitive to these things, and we don't line up on everything. But I do think it is important for people's consciences. Like I wouldn't want to give somebody
it's a real good shout out. Jokes
like,
aside.
hey, I love this thing.
Yeah.
And then be like, well, I'm so offended by this, and you
Yeah.
say you're a Christian. So
No.
it is what it is on that.
That's wise. That's wise.
Show Baraka mentioned this. This is also because it is so sweet and heartwarming. It is an adult show. It's rated MA for a reason. Some of the language can get salty, but Ted Lasso was probably the best thing I watched.
People keep
this
telling me
year.
to check that out.
Ted Lasso. It's a 10 episode, 10 30-minute episodes Apple Plus series that it's a little unfortunate that it's on Apple Plus because a lot of people are probably missing out on it. But Jason Sudeikis, who I know a lot of our listeners are in Kansas and Missouri, or we have a lot of listeners in Kansas and Missouri because that's where we're based out of now. A lot of fun. Kansas City shout-outs. It's about a college football coach who goes over to England to coach professional soccer. And it's fish out of water. It's a really fun mix between like a British comedy show and an American comedy show. It's super smart, super heartfelt, and like one of the very few shows that like genuinely is a champion of goodness. He's a flawed character. He's a flawed person. But I mean, the show genuinely, and Brett McCracken highlighted this on some of his articles recently in like year-end roundups, like the show really, really just lifts up goodness and positivity and like
Nice.
Christian virtue without, obviously, like, it's not a thing of faith, and it does have R-rated language, etc. But it's a really phenomenal show. Definitely the thing that made me feel the best when I finished it. And then the other television thing I had, I said like 60-some million people watched it, but I thought The Queen's Gambit was incredible, and I know you and your wife watched that, Trev.
When I asked Christina, I was like, yo, what should I throw on my movies list? Because I don't remember anything I watched this year. And she was like, well, I like The Queen's Gambit. And I'm like, yeah, I like The Queen's Gambit.
The Queen's Gambit, because I'm very prone to superlatives. Ted Lasso was like the most uplifting thing I watched.
Yeah.
And like maybe my favorite, but like The Queen's Gambit was the thing that when an episode was over, like I most wanted to watch next. It was just like expertly made. It was incredible.
Nice. Dude, only 11 minutes on movies. Not too bad. I was like thinking, man, we are crushing it. We're even gonna end this thing on time. Then I realized, we still got music and podcasts.
And podcasts were actually my biggest, because I listen to lots of podcasts.
But we doing music.
I mean, y'all are gonna cover mine pretty much.
I'm gonna jump into it. So this year,
I loved when I got the script. I loved seeing your portion.
It's so funny. So I listen to everything I listen to is on Apple Music. That's my streaming platform of choice, and I've been on it from the jump. It's something I've been really excited about from the beginnings. But anyway, they have this section now called like replay, and so you can see your top lists going back years, like 2015, 2016, 2017. So anyway, this year, the
clear
top
winner.
9 tracks of the top 9 of all the songs I listened to this year were from Run the Jewels album RTJ4.
Nice.
And so
Album of the year.
But I mean, I already shouted out Just, which was the number 1 song that I played. I think number 2 was Walking in the Snow. Number 3 was Pulling the Pin.
I think I highlighted Holy Kalama Vote on the feed, but I think Just is the only thing we've talked about on the show.
Yeah. I really love Pulling the Pin.
So good.
I Walking in the Snow is really good.
That's my favorite.
And I mean, I haven't been able to. I've like tried to listen to some of their other stuff. It just hasn't hit. Like the moment that the album was released, and like the content of the album, and the artistry, and the poetry, and the performance, and the lyricism, and the meaning, and like the subtext, and everything just come together in a way on RTJ4 that's just like it's just. Like
it honestly was like a perfect moment in time. Like I'm a fan
really
of
is.
them. I really also do like. I mean, I like all their stuff, but I really like RTJ3 a lot. But I mean, RTJ4, is, and it's so wild. I listened to, I think I maybe shouted this out, a Broken Record episode, the Rick Rubin podcast with Mike and LP. Like they made it like 6 or 8 months before it dropped. But it was just like...
Well, a lot of the references, so like Walking in the
timing.
Snow references I Can't Breathe, but like that was a reference to Eric Garner.
Yeah.
And the stuff
which I actually
that
shared
went
on
down
Twitter.
there.
Yeah, like...
And Just references Eric Garner, and that kind of, like it talks about chokeholds and stuff like
this is
that.
stuff from like 6 years ago.
But just the way history decided to parallel itself in George Floyd because of these issues, and like it was so poignant, especially in their performance. Now, and I'll say it's not for everybody. Like, it's not for like folks. If you're not into rap, you're not like into that kind of genre of stuff. Like, you're not going to enjoy it. There is a good amount of swearing in all of it. And so if that is just offensive and you can't enjoy content like that, then you're not going to enjoy it. And if it's something that hurts your conscience, stay away from it. Like, and I'm not trying to tempt anybody into something that's going to, cause them to, start, violating their conscience and swearing and stuff like that when that's something that they've been struggling against. So just, definitely be careful there. But what I said about it, about the lyricism, about the performance, is which is so smooth, and the moment, like that's all true. Like it's
like a 2020
so good.
anthem.
It's so good. So also I got into an album which also isn't like most of the stuff isn't from this year, but Free Spirit album by Khalid also kind of rounded out my top 30. Khalid just has a great voice.
What is that?
It's like, what genre would you call Khalid, Vince?
It's like R&B?
Yeah,
It's
like
R&B?
a mix of R&B and pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
His
kind of
voice
got
could
some, it's
fit on
really
any track,
smooth.
really. I mean, the dude's so talented.
It's chill. Like it is an album that I listen to when I just want to hear some chill, like kind of poppy vocal, like vocal driven music. So like I just love his stuff. I know he did some. There was like some music workshops in the Apple Store with Khalid, and I found out about some of his work from there. I was like, "Who is this guy?" I started to listen to it. I'm like, "Man, this stuff is good." So it's kind of a go-to for some chill music. Another go-to for some chill music. I love some Chopin. So just some honest
Certainly
classical.
not 2020.
It's not, and like particularly the Nocturne No. 2 in E flat. That is a song that just, man, there's something nostalgic to it for me because it was played on a radio program that I heard like growing up a lot as a kid, and so it's very moving. It's a very moving song for me. So I really love that one. Got into No Big Deal for the first time this year.
Dude, No Big Deal is on fire. He is for sure on my list.
Check out Parabolic if you haven't heard his stuff.
That's a single, right?
It's a single, but it's so good.
Yeah, lowercase tape and slowercase tape were on.
They threw it on the
heavy
slowercase tape, which
rotation.
is fun. But yeah, I played that one over and over again. And then, okay, so this one surprised me. This one surprised even myself. Okay, so this is almost like the guilty pleasure for me. But
I was surprised when I saw this on your list.
Yeah, so earlier this year, Apple Music had a kind of run of playlists, kind of called Artist Essentials Live, and what they would do was it almost played like a radio episode with a DJ and everything, but they would play through an artist's like essential tracks and then talk about them and then have interviews from the artists like interlaced in there. So it's a really sweet deal. I think I'm not sure that they're still up there, but they were really, really awesome. If they are, I'm going to try to find them because they were super good. But I listened to the one for Billie Eilish, and yes, Billie Eilish, the 17, 18-year-old like pop star, won 4 Grammys this year.
She had a good year.
And like, I know it's like young kid emo pop that like is probably not what most people would think of as on brand with the Substance, but like,
or for you personally,
or for even me personally, yeah. But like, she's just talented, and
she's
it's
got some jams.
Crazy to me that as a 15-year-old, like literally making songs in her house with her brother, like in her parents' house, really, she's 15, on Logic, just messing around, like created a #1 song, and then like she actually deals with some like serious topics in a lyrically good way, and like I don't agree with all her lyrics, obviously, but yeah, I will say this. I think it's very interesting to compare where she's at in her mind and lyrically with like other very, very young artists.
Sure.
Like if you look at artists who are very young or her age or the things that they're writing, like this is almost unfair, but like if you compare Billie Eilish at 15 to like Rebecca Black and like Friday, which is unfair. But think about that. Like a lot of kids are in that kind of space at that age where, and that's not the dog on Rebecca Black, right? Because we talked about that in cancel culture.
You gotta
but
get
like,
down.
You got to get down on Friday. And so, but like that is the extent of where like a lot of kids' minds are at that age. And so for somebody to be able to put together the kind of lyrics she puts together is there's just a maturity in the music and in the vocals and in the production that is beyond her years, and I think that it stands out. It is excellent in that way.
There you go. Nice.
So, There you
No,
go.
I checked out some of her stuff after I watched her on that the Hot Wings eating show on YouTube. I think my wife's played some of her stuff. No, she's talented.
Vince, you gonna get into the Billie Eilish now?
Oh, I'm already listening to Billy. But I wouldn't say I'm necessarily that deep of a fan, but I mean, game recognized game, and she's a beast. So if you're talented, you're talented. Like you said, the content is not always the greatest, or what I would be like a go-to always, but I mean, she's just ridiculous in her ability to be able to sing, and she does a great job. She does a great job. And while we're here, I'll just go ahead and dive into mine.
Do it.
So I think a lot of mines are guilty pleasures in a sense.
No, we don't need to be guilty of none of this.
So
No shame.
I already shouted out Shane and Shane's 2020 album. I think that one was really good, and quite honestly,
Something volume like 24 or
21
something
yeah.
crazy.
and
2000.
And honestly, like I crank a lot of their old stuff anyways too. I mean, Shane and Shane they're just beasts. So
Yeah, shout out the Pages album.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, and so a few others that I really enjoyed. So the Shane and Shane wasn't that much of a guilty pleasure, but the rest of these are. Tommy Emmanuel, I also gave him a shout out. He's an Australian guitarist. And he just plays the smoothest acoustic guitar that you have ever heard. Really enjoy his stuff. I mean, he's got archives. He's got anything you're looking for. He's got as far as instrumentals for guitar playing. He's just crazy good. Another, I call this one. I'm gonna stick to it by calling it a guilty pleasure. But
I'm so excited for the link.
yeah, I've actually been listening to 8-bit covers. So 8-bit covers is basically like taking normal like pop songs back in the early 2000s typically and making it sound like a video game. That's basically what it sounds like.
I'm down for
I've
it.
heard about this on the internet. It sounds
Yeah,
kinda
I don't know if there are any albums, like actual albums for this, but I know it's definitely on YouTube. And like I will listen to the 8-bit version of like Gorilla song Feel Good Inc. And it's I mean, it doesn't have lyrics because it sounds like a video game, so it's more just instrumentation, but it's good. I don't know why I like it, but it's great. Yeah, so I also listened to this artist name, and I'm gonna spell the name after I say it. His name is called Kamau, and it is Kamau. And
Can't forget that
As
extra
you do.
yeah, he's a kind of a rapper singer from Brooklyn, and his kind of music is kind of a little interesting to describe because he's a singer, he's a rapper, so it's obviously a level of hip hop in it, but it's also mixed with like traditional African vibes, and like even African drums.
Oh, yeah.
And then he'll even do it's like hip hop, it's like rap, it's like soul, it's like funk.
Is that Mango that you've been listening to?
I'm sorry?
Mango, is that it?
Mango, oh man, bro, I didn't even want to go to the specifics, but
No, I'm just looking up. That's his
yeah, I believe that's just a track. It might be an EP as well. But yeah, he's got that one. I mean,
Oh, nope, it's a one-song track. Never mind.
yeah, I mean, the dude is just
most tracks are
he's
one
got a
song.
very unique voice. I don't think he sounds like anybody else personally.
Got him.
And so he's got a great singing voice,
That's a
and he's just got a
skinny
vibe.
dude.
He's just got a very, very cool but very poignant vibe. He actually had a song. One of his songs was chosen to be in the movie Birth of a Nation, the movie about the slavery rebellion of Nat Turner. Very great movie. I didn't even reference that. That was a few years back, but definitely recommend Kamau.
Wait, they named the movie about the slave rebellion and Nat Turner, Birth
Yeah.
of a Nation? which is like the same name as that super racist movie about the beginning of the KKK, right?
That was a non-accident.
Wow. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure.
that was
That's bold. It's a bold choice.
yeah, it was, and it was fantastic. That's one of like that's like the movie equivalent of Way Too Long to a degree. It's a hard watch. Like that was a hard read, but worth it. Like sit down and watch that movie. But lastly, the last one, this was also a little different. So
I hadn't even heard of this one.
so there's an artist, her name is Rachel Cheno Riri, and that last name is spelled ChinoUriri. She is a British singer, singer-songwriter, and
So it's like, no, never mind. Sorry, I was gonna make a terrible joke, but I bailed.
Bail out.
Wait, what?
He just hit eject on a joke he was going to make.
So her family, she's got like traditional Zimbabwean values. So
Which are
yeah, what are those? Can we list those?
I don't know that. I read that off of her bio. I'm not
you said it very confidently, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that is.
I wanted to say Zimbabwean because it specifies where she's from rather than saying she has traditional African values. Localizes it a bit more.
Sure.
So,
dude, right?
Traditional Zimbabwean African. Wow. Traditional Zimbabwe African.
I'm gonna eject out of that one too.
So, let's just skip that part. She's from England.
Okay, maybe I will edit
This is what happens when we go over and out.
She is from England. She's a British singer, and quite honestly, like I'm married, so I don't have to worry about breakups, right, at all. I'm very confident to say that, but she has like music that will really get you in your feels, and she's also another one that is unique to her voice. Like I don't know anyone that sounds like her. And her music is just like, man, it just makes you want to be empathetic to her because you can tell she's singing from a real place in her heart, and she's written most, if not all, of her songs. And there's one in particular called "So My Darling," and I believe the history behind that is she was like 16 and she wrote a song about a friend that she was, interested in. It's kind of your sappy kind of stuff in a sense. But when you hear the song and actually take the time to listen to the instrumentation, her vocals, and then the lyrics, it's just like it's almost an experience rather than just listening to a song. So I absolutely recommend most, if not all, the things that she's done, especially that track.
I'll check that out sometime. So for mine, I also had RTJ4 and No Big Deal on. Trevor already covered that, and just for time, like I'd also say for me, I'm certain I did not listen on Apple or Spotify for very much of this year, but I'd be certain that RTJ4 was probably far and away my most listened to album of the year. Just so many, it was a perfectly timed album, and all the disclaimers that Trevor gave. But yeah, like I said, Walking in the Snow was my favorite, especially as thoughtful people of faith. That song directly addresses us.
Yeah, it does.
And the hypocrisy that many people are left in if they kind of toe the party line and just don't think for themselves and don't care about their fellow man. It just hit me real hard. And then, yeah, No Big Deal had a crazy year, had a ton of songs, get over 1 million streams. And then Lowercase Tape was dope. And then Slowercase Tape, man, I'm a sucker. I love Chopped and Screwed. I love that stuff. So that didn't get as much plays as Lowercase Tape. But yeah, I enjoyed both of those projects as well. And then a few that we haven't brought up yet. I think we mentioned this for one of the shoutouts or something, because I know I've interacted with them online, is the Porter's Gate Justice songs. Really, really good stuff on there. Probably curated and written particularly for some of the things we're going through right now, but just really heartfelt, excellent stuff from the Porter's Gate. And then Sandra McCracken had Patient Kingdom. Singer-songwriter stuff that she is a really talented artist. It's not the stuff I listen to the most, but saw she was coming out with a new album. A lot of people were talking about it, and I listened to it a number of times and really, really, really enjoyed it. And then another large... So hip-hop's probably my most listened to genre by far. I've heard him say this a number of times, and I've heard different people say it differently. I usually feel pretty confident with pronunciations, but I'm going with Toby Nwigwe. How's
Toby
that sound,
Nwigwe?
Vince? Yeah. Dude put out some fire shit.
I second that.
Man, have you heard any of his stuff, Trev?
I feel like
I'm gonna play some of this stuff after we get off.
I've had one of my friends, Cole, send me some stuff. I think Vince, you sent me some stuff on his
dude stuff.
Yeah, Toby is a beast.
And I'm pretty sure he's definitely a man of faith. I think he identifies, I would say, as Christian, but I mean, some of his lyrics are a little unclear. There's some like Catholic and Muslim stuff that could be interpreted. I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, the man has he very much is trying to promote faith and positivity to folks who really, really need it. And dude stuff hits hard.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm a big fan of like grimy hip hop, but as a believer, there's not a whole lot of stuff in that realm, and it really hits the spot for me.
I definitely recommend him and his song. Like I told you, Phil, Ewu, which is layered. Ewu is, I believe, in an Igbo word for goat, which already plays on a couple other things. And then he's got a song, one of his earlier ones, called Heat Rock. And that's the one that hooked me. After I heard that one, I was like, yep, I'm a fan.
I'm more of an album guy. I think the only song right off the top, other than the Breonna Taylor one, which was like, I think one of the ones that made him like super popular, which is almost kind of like a hook. It's not a super song. Fresh Air is the only single that really comes to the top of mind.
That's a good one too.
Because that was the one with the Scorsese reference. But his Pandemic Project, and then his other album that was big this year, which I'm blanking on right now, the Sync Originals, like really good stuff.
Yeah, he actually got his startup from just doing what he called, I think he called it like Sultry Sundays or something like that, where he would just like rap over beats and do a video every Sunday. And then he ended up was like, you know what, I'm actually kind of getting big off this. So I'm just gonna go for it. Like I'm gonna drop a song every single Sunday for the next 10 years. And so that's his goal. I mean, he had a couple kids, so that schedule kind of went off a little bit, but
got 4 kids.
Man,
no, dude's
good.
super talented.
Really
Look
good.
forward to whatever he's doing next.
in work.
All right, podcasts.
Yeah, and shout out to the folks who are still listening, enjoying the.
Yeah, this is a long one.
You're kind of like, it's like, hey, pull up a chair.
This will be a yearly tradition that will hopefully get a little bit more structured as we go forward.
I don't know.
But
I think it's fun though. Like,
I enjoy these a lot.
if you guys want to throw in your shout outs too along the way, like, for sure, just pull up the socials.
Hit us on Twitter and Instagram for sure.
Yeah, as you're listening.
Let us know what you've been
And
enjoying.
it's pretty much like just joining right in.
It's been a year of media consumption,
We're
so
checking it
let us
out.
know what you've enjoyed.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Listen, we all know your screen time is up like by like 80% from last week. So.
In the screen time. I get those reports.
You get that report on Sunday at 9 a.m.
Here's your average a day.
Why did they decide that it had to come like right in the middle of church though? Like every time it's like, okay, obviously I need to actually connect with God this Sunday, as this screen time report is telling me. Android users are like, what are you talking about, man?
Yo, calm down, bro. we get that too.
You get those? Do they come at 9 and on Sunday for Android users, or do they come at a less convicted time for you guys?
I'm not even gonna lie to you. I got mine turned off.
There you go. Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes you just got to give yourself a little grace. It's a pandemic after all.
Look at you, Vince, posting on Facebook while we're recording.
Nice work. All right, podcasts. We're going to do this. Here we are. I'm not going first because I feel like I looked through my podcasts. Like, okay, so like for me, a lot of my podcasts was I listened to them to stay focused, to stay in the zone at work. It was something that would keep the attention that I could put on for a long time without having to fiddle with it a lot, with like queuing up new songs like you have to do with music because the album's only 40 minutes long, like podcast 40 minutes long, and then you get a whole series of them, right? So like you can go all day. So like being thrown off of that this year because of the pandemic, I feel like wasn't a huge podcast year for me. But I definitely listened to a number of episodes from the Holy Post. So if you haven't checked them out yet, like we shout them out all the time. I love the work. Love the work that they do. Also really loved Louder Than a Riot.
Which you shouted out last episode.
Which I have shouted out.
The episode
before.
that is coming out this week.
Yep.
As we record.
So if you haven't heard those shout outs or you haven't seen those episodes, I mean, also I'd say I stand by all the podcasts that I shouted out in our 2018 review as well. So go back, check out the description, and check those out because they're still around and they're still relevant and they're still life-changing. So go check those out also.
Dope.
That's me.
Sweet.
Vince, what you got? Do you got any podcasts?
Yeah, I'm going to run through these real fast, quite honestly. Love That Neighborhood was one on my list. And we already talked about Jesse Eubanks in that episode. So it's just awesome. I remember when I first encountered that podcast, I had a hard time getting through the very first episode because I was just in a different space at the time.
Oh, that's the racial reconciliation.
Yeah. And now I definitely have enjoyed the content there. I've been listening to a podcast by Legionnaire Ministries called Luther in Real Time. I think I did shout that out at one point. It's basically talking about the 95-point thesis and kind of what happened after and what they're actually doing rather than dropping an episode like on a schedule. They drop it like, so if something happened back in in the 1500s when this happened on like November 3rd, then they'll drop it November 3rd, so it's like it's in real time back on that day or back in that year on the same day. So
I heard it's a really engaging,
very engaging, narrated very well, really good content, very honest content. So I really enjoyed that. The Parcast, Parcast network, actually doles out a lot of different kinds of podcasts. I mean, they have everything between medical mysteries to like societies that vanished, all kinds of interesting topics. The top three for me were cults, obviously. Conspiracy.
My man Vince loves him some cult content.
Conspiracy theories actually made the list, not because it's not validating of any conspiracy theory. Basically, they have two individuals who go over what the situation was and the top 5 arguments for the conspiracy, and then they just kind of rank it like, we think that this conclusion to this conspiracy is like a 1 out of 10. The plausibility of this is just too low, or something like a 5 out of 10 or something like that. So it's very engaging, and it's not saying, oh yeah, did y'all know that the chips are already in your brain? And it's not that kind of thing, but it's also not one that says, everything you think you believe about a particular subject is wrong. So just stop thinking it. It really does a great job of balancing the middle. And then Female Criminals, I found super interesting. Just because you don't hear too much about women getting into kind of the nitty gritty criminals, and it's oftentimes like during the Prohibition era, and a lot of times where other gangsters were doing kind of crazy stuff, and that it's notable and we know about those. There were women criminals or female criminals that were kind of in the thick of it as well, during that time and other times. So it's just interesting to be able to see what women in history who kind of engaged in that were doing. And last but not least, Alpha and Omega Ministries. This is a podcast by Dr. James White. I enjoy a lot of the earlier content. I'm talking a few years ago.
Dude, man, like his work on his review of Chosen But Free by Norm Geisler was like kind of formational for me.
It was the Potter's Freedom.
Yeah. I cannot go this year without saying I've definitely benefited a lot from Alpha and Omega Ministries podcast. Obviously, there is more than 2 handfuls of content that I do not agree with, and I think I think can be done in a way that is quite honestly more honoring to God. But that being said, for the content that I enjoyed, I definitely appreciated the content that came out of Alpha and Omega Ministries.
Nice. So, I mean, for podcasts, for me, as far as we've highlighted a number of podcasts in the faith world before, one of my more recent shout-outs is Doctrine and Devotion. Just really enjoy their show. Enjoy their rapport. Enjoy their commitment to trying to put out encouraging, engaging, high quality, but like lighthearted content. Really love what they're doing. And then Trevor also mentioned on this episode, the Holy Post. Really good stuff. They get great guests. It's a really fun and actually a couple weeks ago, their little jingle at the beginning, the theme song, I was actually listening to it in the morning while I was having breakfast with my son, and I was literally eating a piece of toast when he was singing, like, if it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky and Phil in the Holy Post.
Nice.
I was like, wow. I was like, I should tweet about this, and then I forgot because I was very busy. But really enjoy their stuff. Yeah, Vince mentioned Love Thy Neighborhood. Their new season, man, it was I have not listened to it all yet. It's really heavy. Everything I've listened to is great. But this season hasn't been like a listen when it drops for me, just because 2020's been a year, and they've just had some really excellent but really heavy episodes. But everything I've listened to, I couldn't recommend higher, and I'm sure it's all very good, and I look forward to getting through it. It's just been quite a year, so really love what LTN is doing in their community, what they're trying to do as far as do a model for engaging the community with the love of the gospel, like in real time. So,
and it's super like cool too. I was thinking about this the other day, like how, like when you're talking about these people and these ministries and all that stuff, like these are people who are coming and getting plugged into their local church. Like they're inviting people, like when they're talking about internships, it's literally like people are coming and getting plugged into their church and integrated into the body life of their church.
Yep.
And that's how like all of that is being propelled forward, is out of the life of that church and out of the ministry of that church. And like, man, like I know for our ecclesiology that really uplifts the local church, like that is just hitting it on point.
It's so good. And you guys can look forward to hopefully having Jesse back. We've been talking with him about planning some future episodes of The Substance with him, so just really appreciate him and all the stuff that he's doing. On the other side, I've mentioned a number of Ezra Klein shows. He's been one of my favorite podcasts just this year. Just his commitment to, I would say, like a rigorous examination of the truth. I don't share all of his conclusions, but I immensely respect Ezra Klein's dedication and persistence and discipline to trying to put out the facts. And when there are things he agrees with or disagrees with, trying to highlight best arguments and then weigh their merit. I've highlighted a number of the individual shows, but I mean, I would just say look through the catalog of the Ezra Klein show, see what piques your interest, and you there's not a bad one that I've listened to yet. The Marilyn Robinson one was particularly enjoyable and also kind of jealous. I would love to have actually Marilyn Robinson and Ezra Klein. Those are two of the folks on the top of my list that I'd love to get on the Substance. But really great show. And then there's 2 specific episodes, man. Neither of these were crazy uppers, but just kind of dealing with hard things well. Just really encouraging. 2 of my favorite longtime listens are Tim Ferriss show and then Armchair Expert. Ever since it came out with Dax Shepard, Tim Ferriss did a show this year confronting just some of his own childhood trauma, and it was gnarly. It was a hard listen, but it was wonderful. And then Dax Shepard on the Armchair Expert, he's been a very public advocate of sobriety programs, and he had a relapse this year and did an episode on his relapse after he had gotten back to 1 week. He had over 10 years. I think he had 16 years or something like that. And then he did an episode when he was back at 1 week. And it was just, I mean, I didn't go through the particular childhood trauma that Tim Ferriss did, and I don't have the same experience with addiction that Dax Shepard did, but they were just both of those 2 episodes. We'll link them in the show notes. Just 2 of the best single episodes that I listened to this year, just as far as building empathy and engaging with folks putting themselves out there, and really a high bar example of what a podcast can do, especially because I've listened to so many hours of them both already. It was just extra impactful. Those were 2 of the most memorable episodes that I listened to this year.
Is it called Day 7?
Yep.
Here? Okay. Dope. Very interesting. All right. We did it.
Yeah, we don't really need to do Substance Shoutouts on an episode like this. See the last hour and a half.
Right. It's $1:30. That's fun. But yeah, what did you guys consume this year? We know it was a wild year for folks, and a lot of folks were jumping onto YouTube.
The streaming services were putting out stuff nonstop.
There's lots of good stuff. But what made you think? What did you find heartwarming? What gave you new perspective, or what did you just plain enjoy? Hit us up. You can also send us an email, thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Leave a voice message on our phone line at 913-703-3883.
Yeah, and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us, jump in the conversation with us. Like Trevor said, let us know what you liked, what you enjoyed, what you're looking forward to, maybe some ideas for what we should look at for substantive stories or cinema or songs coming in the future.
Hit us with those recommendations.
Always love listener engagement on that. And then
Vince, why don't you take over?
Hello?
Yeah, no, I was just talking before I had fully thought out my train.
Oh, I heard and then, and I thought it kind of just cut out.
Yep. Nope. That was just me cutting out. That was user error.
That's just Philip's brain and cutting out. That happens on the regular. And then. Can you take us home, Vince?
Yeah, and if you enjoy the content that you've heard tonight or anything that you've heard in 2020, and you'd like to support us, 2 primary ways you can do that is 1, by subscribing. However you are listening to this episode or any episode in the past, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you get our content right to your door. And if you feel so inclined, we also have Cash App. That is at $ the Substance Pod. Anything on your heart that you'd like to give, we would be more than appreciative. We are an independent podcast, and so anything you give will be used toward the podcast, and we will be very, very grateful and appreciative for that.
And if you want to send us a large personal check, we can give you our mailing address.
Yeah.
Send us an email.
Yeah, we could arrange that for sure. $1 for every minute of content that you thought was worth $1.
Dang.
Get some money.
Sweet. Well, guys, we've done it again. We've finished out a year on the Substance.
I don't know if this is even gonna make it or if the music's gonna be playing over this.
Yeah, pretty much.
We've got some great, straight up, some great stuff coming.
Yeah, I fade that music in general. They can still hear it.
We've got some amazing stuff coming up in 2020.
Heck yeah.
I'm not gonna say any names before we've recorded. We have some honestly incredible guests coming up. We've got some topics that we've been brewing and shows we've been cultivating for a while. It's going to be 2021. It's going to be a great year.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you guys know that we don't just like stay hanging out in the waiting area or with the shallow end. We dive right in there, and so just be ready, and we'll hopefully see you guys in the new year
on the Substance.
Nice work. Works on the mic. Yay.
Boom.
Did it.
All right, man. That's a wrap.
That's an episode.